Hi everybody, my name is Morgan Rudd and I'm a researcher at the Duke Marine Lab. I study coastal habitat conservation and restoration, primarily in habitats that you can find on the coast of North Carolina, so things like salt marshes and oyster reefs. Today I'm going to be answering a couple questions about my job and my life as a scientist. So the first one is, how did I choose what to study in college? That was actually an accident. I went into college not having a clue what I wanted to study, and when I needed to sign up for classes, the ones that I was most interested in were already filled up with other people, and I ended up signing up for an ecology course and then a geology class as well, because those were the few that were left that could fit into my schedule. And so I really ended up loving both ecology and geology, and by the end of my first year I had decided that I wanted to be an environmental science major. Another question is, how long did I have to go to school? Well, I spent 4 years at the University of Virginia, which is where I did my undergraduate degree, and then I went straight into my master's program at Duke, and so that was another 2 years. So I did 6 years total, which not everybody does. Some people go for 4, some people go for even less, and then some people even go on to do a PhD, which is something that I'm actually considering right now. So we'll see where that goes. And then finally, what does a normal work day look like for me? So I would say that I don't really have a typical work day, especially in the summer. I'm out doing a lot of field work. I can be on the boat some days, or I can be in schools doing outreach and education. And then sometimes I'm just sitting at my laptop doing work on the computer. So it really just depends. And that's probably one of my favorite things about my job, is that it's just so different depending on what project I'm working on. One of my really favorite things though is that I get to be outside a lot. I get to be on the boat a lot.
Hello, my name is Crisol. I'm a social scientist and I'm from Mexico. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of what inspired me to do what I do. So I think since I was a little kid, I've been a little nosy, but we can call it a good observer, it sounds better. I love telling stories. I'm very curious. I have thousands of questions all the time about everything. And I'm a problem solver. I find very rewarding to be finding solutions to very complicated problems. So since I was a little kid, I was all the time driving my parents a little nuts, asking them any kind of questions. Like, why do we call the chairs chairs? Who made this decision and why? How we learn how to cook the food. So they always, obviously they didn't have all the time the answers to my questions. So the person that more inspired me, I think it was my mom, because in that time we didn't have internet. So we were depending 100% on the books that we can get and learning from them. So I was living in a small community on the coast of South Mexico, and my mom made an extra effort to find a huge 6-volume encyclopedia to see if that could help me to find some answers to my questions, which it did actually. So I spent 2 months reading the whole thing, and I realized about it was very entertaining for me, that I really enjoy learning all this stuff. So when I was a teenager, my other cousin opened my eyes and changed my life when she told me that she was a social scientist, and there is actually a job for people like me, people that is curious and like to spend a lot of time observing what is going on in the world. So I'm gonna tell you, what do we do? And I think the first thing that explains what a social scientist does is that we are professional people watcher. Yes, we are trained to be very good at observing human behavior, especially when we are in groups or communities. An important part of our job is spending a lot of time hanging out with different kind of people and asking them about their daily life, their jobs, their culture, their motivations, their needs. So we're all the time asking them questions. which drives me to the second skill for social scientists. We are question-making machines. Yeah. But I think that's something that every scientist is. No matter what field they are, we develop a superpower to ask deep questions that help us to understand better how the world works as it does. The third thing that defines a social scientist, or maybe any kind of scientist, is we are professional storyteller. We become good at telling the world what we have observed, why things are as they are, and what those groups and community likes or need. So this is the last piece of our job that I personally find very important and rewarding, because we were trained to gather and understand a lot of information about our communities. We have the power to encourage politicians, major communities, groups, enterprises, schools to understand better people's needs and to help them to think about better ways to live together, to craft better rules, to organize better, to improve our communities. So, in my daily life, how do I do that? How my day looks like? That's one thing that I love more about a scientist's life, because our daily life never looks like the same. Sometimes we are on the field, and it depending what kind of scientists we are, is how our fieldwork looks like. For me, is sometimes living in isolated fishing communities, drinking coffee, looking at the ocean, and talking for hours with a fisherman. Because I study fisheries. I study how fishers organize and why do they fish as they do. There are another scientists that spend a lot of time on the cities trying to understand how the neighborhoods organize. So there are different kind of social scientists, but we all are doing a little bit of field work, which means hanging out with people that we want to hang out. But another times, like now that we have to be at home and we cannot be outside in the world, I spend a lot of time writing about my stories. So I'm trying to put all the information that I have learned about how fishers fish to share with the community. So I spend hours thinking about how to share these stories with the world, with kids, with other scientists. So another times we are on the classroom teaching our students, helping them to become scientists as we are, and it's very rewarding. So as you can see, the scientist life is never boring. We have a lot of challenge. We need to work very hard because we need to develop a lot of skills to be able to do all this. We need to be very open-minded and humble to really listen what's going on, to be able to observe deeply what's going on around of us. And I think that's very rewarding. I will never change what I do for anything else, even if sometimes I have to work harder. So if you feel related with one of the things or one of the skills that I just told you, if you feel that you're very curious, that you like to understand the world, it not necessarily has to be about how people live. It could be about the animal world, it has to be about the ocean, it can be about the weather. But if you are very good asking questions all the time and you like to tell stories, I think you have a scientist inside of you. So I would like to encourage you to follow that passion and try being a scientist as we are, because it's very fun and very rewarding.
Hi everyone, my name is Carson and I am a graduate student at UNC Chapel Hill. And being a graduate student just means that I am training to become a scientist. I am a coastal geologist who studies salt marshes over really long time scales, like hundreds to thousands of years. Some of my sites are as old as 1315. To give you some historical context, in the 1300s, that's when the Black Death was plaguing Europe. And so I studied these salt marshes on really long time scales to see how they respond to things like sea level rise and storms. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a few questions that people commonly have about becoming a scientist. And the first one is, what inspired me to do what I'm doing now? I'll say, unlike a lot of my friends, I really didn't know that I wanted to be a scientist growing up. I did always have a love for nature, but I was starting to study psychology for a few years in college. And things really started to take a turn once I became really involved in backpacking. So I would do a lot of really long hikes in these really remote places. And so I've been to really cool places in Utah, the Grand Canyon, and places out west in Oregon. So once I started doing all of those fun outdoor hikes, I really knew that I needed to find a career that was going to allow me to be outside and allow me to be in nature and do something that I really loved. So that's when I decided to switch my major to geology, and I came to the coast in Morehead City. So I took this course that was all about geology of barrier islands. So I learned about overwash deposits that form during storms. I learned about salt marshes. I learned about seagrass. I learned about oyster reefs. And that really caught my interest. And so I decided to become a graduate student. So I'm currently working on my master's, and in total I've been in school for about 20 years. And I recently got accepted into another graduate program to do my PhD. So I'm actually looking at 5 more years of school. So my biggest piece of advice that I would give a middle schooler who wants to become a scientist is just to find what interests you. So take a bunch of classes, a lot of different science classes. You know, I thought at the beginning that I might want to be a marine biologist, but I really didn't enjoy those classes. And what I really enjoyed was taking geology classes. But in order to get to geology, because it's not quite as well known of a subject, I had to take all of these different courses in chemistry and biology, in ecology and evolution, and marine sciences. And once I really found coastal geology, I was pretty much sold. So my biggest piece of advice is to take a bunch of courses and take a bunch of different courses that interest you, and maybe try not to settle on something when you're so young, and just enjoy all that science has to offer.
Hi, my name is Vicki Thayer, and I am the coordinator for the Central North Carolina Marine Mammal Stranding Network. I also teach marine mammal biology for NC State. So what does the Stranding Network do? We work together with a lot of talented people up and down the East Coast, including veterinarians, to respond to marine mammals that strand in North Carolina. And here that means about 140 strandings a year, and we get dolphins and whales, 1 species of porpoise, manatees, and 4 species of seals. When we get a call, we go to the beach, and usually they're dead, but occasionally they're alive, and we try to figure out why they died. We do necropsies, which is like an autopsy on a different species, and learn as much as we can about what's going on with that individual. I apply for federal grants every year to fund my position, and I have 1 part-time assistant. One part of my job I love is trying to teach people about the adaptations of marine mammals. So I made this model of a bottlenose dolphin, and I bought a big stuffed animal and then took everything out and made foam organs. So here's the blowhole and the tongue, and the melon and the brain, and here is the larynx going through the esophagus, and the esophagus goes to the stomach, and oh look, here's a fish head. The stomach's open up so that students can see how the anatomy works without being present at an actual necropsy of a marine mammal. One piece of advice I would give to middle schoolers is find something you love and work really hard to get there. Then see if you can volunteer to get experience in it, read everything you can about it, and don't give up. Keep following your dreams. And I know that you can succeed. And it may not be exactly the way you planned it, but you'll really be happy doing what you love to do. Thanks, and best of luck to all of you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chen Yi Wu. I'm a PhD student in the Division of Marine Science and Conservation at Duke University. My research focuses on energetics of non-Atlantic right whale, this guy, and the issue of large whale entanglement. I was majoring in engineering as an undergrad, but have received a dual degree in biology. Given my multidisciplinary background, I am using various computational models to estimate the level of forces experienced by the animals when they swim, as well as simulate the process of entanglement in order to understand how they get caught in fishing gear. So here just is one of the model I'm using. Basically, you can see animal is swimming. It's all simulations, and it hit the gear, then is tangling by the ropes. So I was first exposed to cetaceans virtually, when I was little. I can't remember when, but probably as a second or third grader, by watching the movie episodes Free Willy, featuring Keiko, the orca. Okay, though not until I was in college, I finally saw dolphins at sea. I did change my mind a little bit in high school. I wanted to be a biochemist at the beginning, but then I put it on hold after I realized that I'm not good at chemistry at all. At that time, I got a chance to do an independent study with professors in college on ocean science, and was really fascinated by the oceans around me. So I feel like I want to do something that is ocean related, and that's how everything got started. Just pause a little bit. I just want to point out that I grew up in Taiwan, and that we have curriculum for all students from elementary school to high school. That means everyone learns the same thing and have to stay in schools from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And also, there are very few colleges in Taiwan are accepting students without pre-decided majors. So I chose hydraulic and ocean engineering as my major when I got to college, because I feel that learning water itself allow me to understand the ocean current systems from a marine environment perspective. In addition to taking courses in biology and did some research with cetacean lab in Taiwan, the only cetacean lab in Taiwan, I got to work as a naturalist on a whale watching boat for a few summers and educate the public about animals and the sea. This working experience made my mind to obtain a higher degree in marine conservation, like what I'm doing right now, overseas, and I plan to contribute such knowledge to my home country after I finish. Okay, the next question: what advice would you give a middle schooler who wants to be a scientist? So as I just mentioned, I was educated in a totally different systems compared to the States. So I believe that students in middle school here get a lot more choices and than what I had in Taiwan maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I just want to say that chances are there, and once you feel that something you're interested in, ask your teachers, ask your parents, ask your friend, because maybe they're brothers or sisters, they're in college, or they know someone that is in college, so you can get a chance to talk with them. So just try it. Okay, so very last questions. Can you still do art as a scientist? I really like this one because my answer is short. Absolutely. I like to sketch postcards every time I travel and send one to myself just as a memories. So I have a couple postcards I want to show here. So the Spain, Italy, Toronto, Niagara Falls, New York. I went to a lot of places and I drew postcards, and I also take pictures whenever I just go out. Though they may not closely related to my current work as a grad student who is doing computer modeling, I believe these skills are powerful tools in terms of science communication. So I look forward using them at some point of my career, like doing some outreach stuff, and also just to share news that people just, some people just cannot imagine what it looks like working on sea, but I can just tell them with beautiful pictures and paintings or something like that. So I think that's it, and I hope you enjoy it and stay healthy. Bye bye.